one of the most important features is to have a well-written funding opportunity announcement. And that is actually rarer than one. It's not as common as one would like it to be. And in fact, you could probably, as part of this class or just for your own background, go through CDC announcements that if they're still on the grants.gov, just to say, do you understand as a potential applicant what it is they're paying for? And so that's actually one of the first things to know as an applicant writer is, do you understand what they're asking? Reviewers are often not experts in the field, or they're at least generalists, and they may have some expertise in the area of the application, but we're busy, in a hurry folks. Make it easy for us to find the answers to the questions in the review criteria. Don't bury it, go along. The good funding opportunity announcements are written in a way that it's easy to line up your application. So you know what goes in section 1, you know what goes in section 2, and you know what goes in section 3. So, it seems like basic stuff, but folks will not do it. Most funding opportunity announcements are written in a very, chronological order in the sense of, you should put in section 1 the following things. You should put in section 2. So just basic labeling and following along with the FOA is very helpful. And it just makes it stands out because it's easy for the reviewer to review. That's what makes them stand out. If it's cumbersome to pick out what's important, then they'll stand out for wrong things. Don't leave sections out. If you want to stand out, make sure you provide good evidence, good descriptions, whatever that's asking for in each section.
Maybe the first thing of all is make sure that the organization that you are doing that grant writing on behalf of meets the criteria for eligibility. That's probably the basic. It's like plugging in the TV set, but there are times when we've gotten applications from organizations that were not eligible. I think it goes beyond a well-written grant. There's the importance of really having a solid conceptual idea about the purpose of the proposal and how it meshes with the request for proposals, whether that request be from federal or state government or private foundation. And so the writing is only half the battle, truthfully. In fact, I've reviewed any number of grant proposals that were well written but were off the mark relative to what was being requested, or that were well written but didn't reflect the actual guts of a program. I think the biggest surprises are when proposals come in that just really don't have anything to do with what the funding intent is. And I always feel terrible because every proposal takes time and energy and organization to put together. And so when you see something that has clearly taken an effort to put together, but it's not on the mark, it's very sad for the person or the group that put that together. Understand the RFP. Understand whether, in fact, if you're going to write an application on behalf of an organization, whether the project that's being put forward actually matches with the intent of the RFP. When we do workshops for our potential applicants, I always say, please, if you're a square peg trying to fit in a round hole, we'll figure it out. And we don't want you spending time on something that's not going to be successful.
Needs to address the specifics that are requested in the request for proposal. So, for example, if there are requests for demographic information or other contextual data and in discussion, it's vitally important to include that. So each element of the request for proposals needs to be included and addressed. It needs to be logically presented, and the information in the text about the program needs to match the information in the budget about the financial request. Another shockingly common mistake is for people to submit for grant funding for resources that are explicitly prohibited in the guidance for the grant. It's not uncommon for people to have something they've been working with or interested in or passionate about, and they just submit it to every opportunity that comes by. That's not a winning strategy.
do your research, whether it's a federal, state, or foundation grant. Match your work to what they're looking for. And I don't mean turn yourself inside out and make your program something it's not just so you can get funding. But be sure you have layered your program onto their requirements as well as you can. Follow the guidelines closely. Even use their headings, like background or capability of applicant, because it makes it so easy for the reviewer to know where they are in your application. And like I said, do your research. Make sure your application really fits with the foundation or the funder that you're approaching.
Well, I think, in a way, there's most funding opportunity announcements, and this is my personal thing. I think a well-written funding opportunity announcement has a purpose statement. The purpose of the whole funding should only be 1 or 2 sentences. However, that's rare. Because if you can't, I say to my coworkers, and when I've written FOAs, if we can't say this in 1 or 2 sentences, do we really know what we want? That said, you'll find most FOAs have 1, 2, maybe even 4 pages of purpose statements, which really include a lot of things. And so one of the difficulties for applicants is if it's a long-winded purpose, trying to tease out of there what is the real intended purpose. You really should have someone outside the development process read through it and say, yeah, I understand it or I don't. Learn how to write well. I mean, this has been age-old. You've probably heard it from your parents. You've probably heard it from your professors. You heard it from your peers. It still holds true even in more so in electronic network world. If you can't write clear thoughts, even if you're using emojis and all text, it's still got to be clear. And you still want to make sure you're communicating what you want to.
This does get back to the writing. I think the clarity and simplicity of the information can make something stand out. When there are proposals that ramble or wander or try to just put lots of big theoretical words together, it makes it really hard for reviewers to understand what the proposal is about. And it's far more successful to use simple declarative sentences that tell a clear story about what you're hoping to do than it is to try to sound really, really academic, at least for most private foundations. I think the other thing to remember is often proposals are reviewed by a mix of people. So in a foundation setting, they may be reviewed by staff plus external reviewers that have various levels of knowledge of the subject area that's being, the funding falls within. And for instance, with us, we might have a request for proposals that relates to, say, behavioral health. And if it's a large competitive grant process, we'd have a couple or 3 internal reviewers, and we might have as many as 6 or 7 external reviewers, of which, say, 3 would also be assigned to any given proposal. And those reviewers may have expertise in specific areas of behavioral health. They might have expertise in priority populations such as uninsured individuals, or if there are special populations that are being focused on in that particular RFP, they might be real experts in that population. But it's incredibly important to make sure that proposals are written in a way that the reviewers can understand. And I've seen this happen both with foundation and with governmental funding, that if you assume that reviewers know too much, sometimes they don't. And that can be really problematic when the scoring happens.
It needs to have been proofread and be written in English that is understandable to all readers, both those familiar with whatever the topic is and those unfamiliar with the topic. Typos I'm shocked that people don't proofread more carefully.
Good idea is the first thing. Second thing is expressing it well and succinctly and without buzzwords. And public health, community health, and medicine have a huge lexicon of buzzwords. And yes, my advisory committee is largely health people. I have a few business type people. But if we can't see the good idea, if we can't see the trees because the forest is just so overwhelming with so many buzzwords, that's a problem.
The second part that's important to pay attention to is the evaluation criteria. It may actually be buried deep in the application, but it's the actual scoring, what you'll be scored on. It's interesting. There are some scoring criteria, for example, as I said before, the scoring criteria, what's important, you misalign your application with the scoring criteria. So every point counts, but it's interesting how folks say there's a scoring criteria of give me your burden statement that's worth 30 points out of 100, and people give it one paragraph. And they'll give 3 pages on a 5-point. And it's like, be realistic. If you see something's worth 30 points, put a lot of thought into that.
Make sure to spend the most time, the most space in your application talking about the things that are going to get you the most points. So I can't tell you how many times I've read a grant application where there are 0 or 5 points assigned to organizational background, and the first 2 pages of a 10-page application are devoted to that. And then when it comes time to describe the program, there's no space left to actually talk about what you're going to do. So,
in the work that I do, it's predominantly engaged in supports for older adults. And I think probably 80 to 85% of those that have submitted proposals in my career, I'll begin by telling me what I already know about the population. So being aware of who your readers are, and if the request for proposals lays out the demographics, no need to spend precious real estate in your proposal copy to reiterate that.
Is just about every set of guidelines from a foundation or even the feds says, state your problem and what's the background, what's the research, what's the sort of context and cultural history or whatever, what's the capabilities of the organization, and then you get into goals, objectives, and all that. Sometimes people spend so much time on that first part. They're obsessed with all the research. They want to prove they know that world. They do a huge amount of background. In limited sized proposals, that can squish you down so that you're not expressing your idea very well. We see that a lot. People get so absorbed with the front part, with the background, with the research, whatever, that they kind of run out of gas when they get to the idea, and they just state some goals and objectives, and it's kind of like, really? That's not very interesting. So I would say write up your idea, what you want to achieve, how you want to do it first, then do the background and stuff, so that you're spending your energy on the part that is supposed to really capture the reader.
Almost nowadays, most funding opportunity announcements have like a pre-application call, but they also give you the opportunity to sort of email or ask questions that you don't understand. That's what I would do. If you're going to be part of a application writing team, make sure you ask lots of questions.
most funders, particularly private foundations, and certainly we were in state government, are very willing to ask questions or to answer questions that applicants may have. We certainly can't answer anything that would put one applicant at more of an advantage than another, but to clarify what we're looking for, to encourage people to seek out resources to make their proposal stronger. We want to read the strongest proposals we possibly can, and it's to applicants' benefit and to ours. So always pick up the phone or send an email.
If you have doubt about that, pick up the telephone. There are certainly exceptions, but for most foundation funding and a lot of other funding, there are contact numbers or email addresses to send questions to. And it is absolutely worthwhile to take the time to call and say, we're working on X, Y, and Z. We think it relates to this, our request for proposals in this way, or what have you. And to ask point blank, does this sound like it's something within the scope of what you're looking for? Because if not, we don't want to waste your reviewers' time, and it takes a lot of work for us to prepare a proposal. Knowing that you're working with a partner as the funder and appreciating that they really are there to help you is something that's pretty important. Don't be afraid, be honest, and work with them as a colleague. Be collaborative.
But always pick up that phone. If there is a person listed on the website or in the Maine Philanthropy Center guidelines about funders, and if there's a name and there's a number, you should call them. That's what it's there for. I am here to talk to you. And don't be afraid, but just be prepared, that's all. We're not ogres. We're not going to bite your head off. I've had some very long conversations with some folks this week. I've pushed back a lot on their ideas. I've tried to shape them a little, simply because I know the questions that my advisory committee will ask. And I'm the one who's supposed to be able to answer them. And if I can't answer them, I can't pitch your idea well. Because ultimately, I am your interface between your good idea and my funders. So if I can't answer the questions, you're not going to do well.